I am Marcus James Dixon with Gold Derby, here with my colleague Rob Licuria, and we are joined today by Emily Blunt, who plays Catherine Kitty Oppenheimer in the movie Oppenheimer. Emily, did you ever imagine in your wildest dreams that this movie would be close to making $1 billion at the box office?
No, I mean, we have all been left just awestruck by it. And you obviously hope when you make something that people will see it and that they will love it. But I don't think any of us were prepared um, for the reaction. But I realize, people are looking for an experience, and Oppenheimer is just offers that full kidnap into a world that is full of spectacle. It's an absolutely extraordinary movie. We're also wowed by it, really. And but again, I think the runaway quick fire reaction that it had was incredible, really.
Yeah, it is because a movie like this, 3 hour film, it's a biopic. It might have been a hard sell in any other, if any other person was behind it. But as a Nolan pick, I just feel like it was such an event, and I so loved it. And what I really loved as well, Emily, is that I didn't know much about Kitty Oppenheimer at all, and I realized that behind this great man is this great woman, as the saying goes. So how keen were you to elevate her story as part of this whole phenomenon?
I mean, she was such a colorful, wild character in Chris's script. And certainly when I delved into the book that we were all encouraged to read, American Prometheus is this massive book that gave amazing snippets into her. And my favorite quote I read from that book is it said, Kitty didn't do small talk, she only did big talk. And it was so emblematic of her and that non-conformist attitude that she had, sort of refusing to contort herself into the ideal housewife. I felt she was rebellious and exciting. And I think she kind of, it's like when she meets Oppenheimer, it's like two comets coming together. And however, I'm sure tempestuous and at times ugly their marriage inevitably was, it was a successful one. And she did protect him and she did support him and she kind of worshipped him, So even though I think her sort of adoration of him and her support of him was to her own detriment, really, as a person. To me, however sharp-edged she was, I always found her quite heroic. And even in the face of when she starts to lose dignity, I still thought she was heroic. So I loved it. I loved playing her.
And I'm curious, what did you make of the whole Barbenheimer cultural phenomenon from earlier this summer? I mean, it was everywhere, and people were dressing up as these characters for Halloween. That's how you know you actually made it.
Yeah, I mean, we were floored by it, and I think all wanted to celebrate it. That this was a moment in cinematic history where you don't have to pit two movies against each other. You can see both, and it doesn't have to be gladiatorial. It can be just an incredible celebration of the diversity out there in films. And I remember going to see the movie because the strike happened, so we never got to watch it with an audience. And John and I nipped into this mall in Nyack, New York at 4 p.m. and there were teenage boys coming in dressed as him with like pipes coming out of their mouths and swilling fake martinis. And I just couldn't believe it. It was when you realize you were a part of something so much bigger than words could really phrase.
Yeah, let's talk about some of your highlights from the film. That iconic scene towards the end in front of investigators or interrogators, sorry, baying for blood. That back and forth between you and Jason Clarke was so riveting, I remember. And I'm just curious, what discussions do you recall having with Christopher Nolan on set that day to summon up Kitty's defiance and forthright demeanor and confidence and in the take that ultimately made it on screen?
Well, I think firstly the scene was so exhilarating, even on the page. Also, I felt you're just wanting someone to come in there and fight for him. And I think she had deteriorated and become so unpredictable, and clearly had a problem with alcohol at that point. And so I think she's sort of set up to fail and to choke. And I think what had helped, weirdly, was that we'd shot all of the scenes beforehand where she's just sitting behind him, festering with rage at everyone coming in, not accounting for their own parts in it, not supporting him. We'd filmed all of that for days in this very claustrophobic, very intense room that really was, Oppenheimer was interrogated in a very shabby little room, no sense of ceremony or anything like that. And so we've been shooting all those scenes. So I'd felt this sort of fester build in me quite naturally, just watching everyone come in and rake him across the coals. And so when it came time to do the scene, you know, Jason Clarke is such a great dance partner, and he really plays the bully so brilliantly. And I remember on the day, because Chris is so open, he's sort of very curious about what you're going to do with the scene, which is unusual for a writer. I feel a lot of writers maybe have a presupposed idea that you're trying to reach for, and he's more like he's sort of interested in what your take on it is. And I remember on the day Jason said, I think I'm going to move my chair in really close to her to try and intimidate her. And I think I remember feeling myself, that sort of toxic masculine move to physically intimidate someone. And it really got my back up. I really felt myself go, you know. And I always thought the scene really was about, yes, fighting for him, but it's a reclamation for herself, right? Of who she is after the loss of dignity and belief in her. And you want to see that brilliant brain come back to life. And I always wanted to play it at a great velocity, thought it would be exciting. She needs to intimidate him. She needs to one-up him. And I had a great partner in Jason, and I had a very open-hearted, open-minded director in Chris. And I don't know how to explain how it happened. You just kind of, you can prepare as much as you want, and then the scene will, you know, become what it is, really.
So at Gold Derby, I recently spoke to your leading man, Cillian Murphy, and he said that you are, quote, one of his favorite people in the whole world as an actor and as a person. I mean, come on.
Well, the feeling is beyond mutual. I adore him. I just
what did he bring to this role that nobody else could have done?
Oh, he's utterly mesmerizing. He is riveting. The depths of his abilities as an actor are sort of oceanic. He's humble. He's full of so much grace and poise as a person. He's shy. He's funny. He's such a wonderful person to be with. I trust him implicitly. He's my favorite scene partner ever, to be honest with you. And he's just so mercurial as him. He's so ambiguous. It's like this character that he created, and his attention to detail from how he stood to his silhouette to his the fact that he's almost like self-mythologized, and he's by design. Like, it was all so clever and so interior and so subtle. And that IMAX camera was on his face, and his face was a landscape, was just, what a gift to be able to stare at that face, giving all of the nuances that he did for 3 hours.
You talking about it is, I'm getting that same feeling. Like, I remember when I first saw the film on the biggest screen I could find, and I was so blown away. And it reminded me that, personally, I think Chris Nolan he's my favorite director. Every time he brings out a film, it's an event for me, and for so many others. He's so genre defining. I'm just curious then, like, you finally land a role in one of his films. It's all this expectation, but what was it like when you were actually working with him one-on-one? What did you most value about that collaboration?
The lack of chaos on set. You know, he's so understated as a person. He's so prepared, and he's so curious in his actors. He's just like amazing notes. He'll never come in before 3 takes. He'll sort of give you 3 takes to see what you find, and understands that I think a lot of actors probably self-correct within 3 takes. You can feel when it's a doozy. You can feel when it's not your best version of that line or that scene or that moment. He lets you dig around for a while, and then he'll just come in so quietly and privately, and it'll just be, he's so English, you know, and he's like, you know, if you thought about this, and like, if you think about it like this, you know, we could take it this way, you know, just play around with it. You know, it's just so calm and so private. I think that's what I realized with him. There's no bedlam on set. There's no chaos, and it just gives actors wings, because I think usually as an actor you probably are a bit concerned, oh well, does this scene work, or I don't know if I love this like, what's the camera doing, you know? You're kind of thinking about that stuff sometimes if you don't feel secure in that way, and he just alleviates all of that. And I think if actors are trusting, they have wings. And I think that's why the performances in his movies are really great, because he kind of gives you wings, because he's, in him we trust, you know.
Mm-hmm. And of course, we're at Gold Derby. We have to talk awards. You have a Golden Globe, a SAG Award, a Critics' Choice Award. What would it mean to you as a working actress for Oppenheimer to be your very first Oscar nomination?
It would make me cry. I would be so moved. I would be so moved that it would be for this movie. But I also have been around the block long enough to know that you can't, you know, I can't have too tight a grip on these things. And it is just about the work ultimately. But it doesn't go without saying that we'd all be overjoyed if the film got recognized like that.
Well, I mean, to be honest, I think a lot of us would cry because, you know, for those of us who've been watching you for years and years, I think what I most appreciate about what you bring to a film, Emily, if you don't mind me saying, is this: you've got a really great knack of external warmth and resilience in a character with a lot of vulnerability and fragility bubbling underneath. And that's very apparent in Kitty. It was very apparent even in like Emily Charlton back in 2006 and Mary Poppins and your role in A Quiet Place. It's just something that I think you're really good at. I'm curious then, in that, thinking about that, is that dynamic difficult to calibrate from scene to scene, particularly on a film like Oppenheimer?
You know, I think it's I'm not really it's really hard for me to talk about sort of the process, because it's sort of hard to word why things happen. But I guess I'm always interested in every moment, in every scene, and every person, to see the full spectrum of what a moment is about. It's no one is just one thing, and no moment is about just one thing. No question that someone asks you is about just one thing. It's about a myriad of other things. So I guess I'm always curious about and intent on playing a whole weather system, right? Even in a moment, because I think that is what humanity is about. So I do try to find that. But of course, when you're given the gift of a script like this, there's endless undercurrents to mine, endless, especially with a character like her, who's so sharp-edged and so difficult and prickly from the outside. But I'm like, but I'm interested in the shadow of someone's life. I want to keep seeing it all the time, why people are the way they are. And like you brought up Devil Wears Prada, and you could have, you know, you could word that person as just being, oh, she's such an acerbic British bitch, you know. But to me, it was just all about quiet desperation, you know. She's just desperate, and she identifies herself and defines herself by that job. So I used to think, well, God, I bet she doesn't sleep, she doesn't eat, she doesn't do, this job is everything. So I think if you play someone like that, then it's weirdly funnier as well.
Yeah.
You know,
It's so interesting and so relatable and so organic, right? Yeah, totally.
And before we go, I just wanted to tell you, I was in the audience at Saturday Night Live in 2016 when you hosted with musical guest Bruno Mars. What do you remember most about that experience? And would you ever go back and do it again?
Oh, it would be so fun. I remember Bruno was so nice to my then 2.5-year-old daughter.
Mm-hmm.
She's 9 now, but he came out of his dressing room. We had dressing rooms next to each other. And he goes, well, you must be Hazel. And he picked her up and just took her into his dressing room. And she was gone for about 15 minutes. I don't even know what. She was delighted. But I mean, it's raucous and fun and crazy and terrifying. And I would do it again for sure.
Wow, raucous fun, crazy, terrifying. I think that's probably a lot of your career to date on so many roles. And for that, we really appreciate your time, Emily. Thank you for your time today, and congrats on amazing work.
Thank you very, very much. Thank you, guys.